not throw it away, but the implementation strategy must be inclusive and be apolitical if we want to deliver. I hope we have the political will to do the right thing. That would be my comment with respect to the host community funding and the project. The framework is well defined, far better than what you have without to use the derivation fund and how to use NDGC funds, or even Ministry of Niger Delta. This is what we need to go back and amend all of those funding sources so that those communities can get direct benefit from those funds. 13% derivation, surrender 10% of it to those communities. 3% technical funds, surrender 10% of it to those communities. The state budget, surrender some percentage of this to those communities, and then put this settlers fund to it, and we see what will happen. It will just be like Houston area, where you have energy corridor in the Niger Delta that everybody will want to go and be part of it. And you'll be surprised, oil will flow. But if you don't develop them, forget it. The agitation will continue. And finally, actually we have the political will to surrender 10-20% of the royalty revenue to those communities. And the ownership agitation will disappear. Oh, this is probably late. It's not part of the bill right now. We can think about that in the future. But that is the way to put posterity in this debate. This bill is about the future, not about now.
Thank you so much, Prof. Our second caller, we lost our first caller in terms of signals, and our second caller is calling from Benin Kebbi, Uma. Hello, Uma.
Hello?
Hello, Uma. Could you please turn down the volume of your television set, please?
Hello?
Hello, Uma. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear
Before
you.
you make your contribution, could you turn down the volume of the television set, please?
I'm not close to TV set.
Go ahead, please. Go ahead. Make your contributions.
Okay, thank you. My name is Umar Mohammed Anati, calling from Benin Kebbi. Please, educate me. In what ways all this grammar that you are blowing, how does it benefit a common man in the street? What is the benefit a common man will get as a result of passing this bill? That is my own question. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Omar. And at this point, I'll say, when we come back from the break, we'll go to Professor Yinka to respond to Omar's question.
Sometime we never see the kind things Nigeria they make. E no reach wetin we dey shop later. We even dey use $22 billion take bring things from Obodo Oyinbo every year. To bring better come inside we Obodo Nigeria, na so our government arrange them import policy come. Now, for us to survive, we must to learn how to feed we serve. So far, that plan don't nearly work finish. Sake of CBN, we stand gidigba to support local farmers and small market people. Our plan to give 10 million people work with 12 products under 5 years don't dey pure. We fit to do am. Make we buy Nigeria to grow Nigeria. Call your banker today for more information on how to get involved.
Nigerian youths are about the greatest asset the country has at the moment. It is therefore not surprising that the administration of President Muhammadu Buhari is strategically responding to the yearnings of the youth through multiple projects and programs. Youth entrepreneurship support years by Bank of Industry, the Youth Investment Fund by the CBN, and several other conditional cash transfer programs. Recruitment of 774,000 social workers, majority of whom are youth. roads, and so many other projects that are beneficial to youths directly or indirectly. If the administration can do all this, definitely with a degree of patience and time, it can achieve more. Nigerian youths must come together to say no to terrorism, no to vandalism, and no to all disruptive tendencies. Hashtag Youth for Greater Nigeria. Pacifying the youths, unifying the nation.
NTA Tuesday Live, a network issue-oriented innovation talk show.
Thanks for staying tuned, and the focus tonight is PIB and matters arising. Just joining us on the program tonight also is Austin Afuru, former MD, Seplat. Good to have you on the program. Austin, can you hear us? Good to have you on the program tonight. Well, Austin, if you have been following through the discussion, what's your own opinion regarding the passage of the PIB eventually?
And it's nice to see Prof. Yinka because she was the author of, I don't know which version of the PIB about 10 years ago. So, and she will tell you that what has just been passed into law when it's attended to by the president is a far cry from the version that she wanted passed into law. I must say that there's been a lot of courage in drafting and passing this PIB. It's a very generous piece of legislation from point of view of the fiscal regime. I'm sure that Prof herself will be surprised at how generous the fiscal terms are, whether it is royalty, whether it is the tax regime and all the production bonuses. I don't think operators can complain anymore about attracting funding into the sector, even at low oil prices, even at $40 oil prices. There's sufficient fiscal guidance and fiscal protection for injection of capital into the sector. But specifically referring to the host community bill, the host community section of the bill. But my problem with the debate about the host community section is it's almost been like a debate between a discussion between the deaf and the dumb. When somebody says, "Oh, I earn 50,000," and you don't tell me whether it's 50,000 naira, or it's $50,000, or it's 50,000 yen, it doesn't make any sense to me. So on the one hand, you say the host communities are asking for 10%. 10% of what? 10% of what? Some say they're asking for 10% equity. 10% of equity in an operating company doesn't give the host community one dime. I know investors that have 20% equity in some of the operating companies and haven't earned any dividend, 1 cent dividend for the past 5 years. If you have equity in a company, all you can get is dividend when that company makes profit and declares dividend. That's all you get. It's not specific. It's difficult to audit. So why would you ask for 10% equity instead of 5% or 3% of operating costs? I do not understand it. So if anybody is asking for, when they say 10%, 10%, I need to know 10% of what? Anybody who is asking for 10% equity does not know what he's saying, and he doesn't know, he's not doing his community any good or any favor. Just to put that very, very clearly. Now let's go back to the 3 or 2.5, as Prof said. The bill itself recommended 2.5%. They have opted to somewhere between 3 and 5%. But let me say this. So when people are making these arguments, you should be able to simulate the actual figures. Any company, any responsible company that has been very proactive in handling its host community and has been devoting funds transparently into working with the host communities, if you work out the figures, you find out it's somewhere between 2 and 5% of your operating operating costs. That's what you spend every year. Pick any company who's been doing the right thing. I'm talking about companies that have minimal disruption in their activities because they are in harmony with their host communities. In the 10 years that I ran Seplat, since 2013 till date, we haven't had disruptions in activities from host communities. We're at peace with them. We spend money for them. We spend money with them. We have a joint committee and we're joint signatories to the fund where we put in this money. And it's transparent how we spend it, and both parties are happy. If I pick out the figures for each year that we spend and check what my OPEX is each year, it's in that ballpark. It's in the ballpark that you are seeing in the bill. So for companies like Seplat that have been very responsible to their host communities, whether it is 3% or 5%, is not much different from what they've been spending. So there will be nothing new to them. The real essence of this bill is that it then compels everybody to be as responsible as those who have been doing the right thing. Because while some companies have been doing the right thing, other companies just spend next to nothing. They just placate a few people and move on. Now you are compelled to put aside a certain amount of money for that host community. And any responsible operator that spends that money properly in the projects, 25% for, put it aside as an investment for the community, and 5% to manage the process itself. And that's about the structure, the way it is. So I have no quarrel whatsoever. Whether it's 3%, is better to be 5%, but to tell you the truth, whether it's 3% or 5%, if it is properly spent, properly administered by both sides, both the operator and settler and the community representatives that make up the committee, if it is properly spent, that is not small money. But let me also say this, so that we know the difference between a disciplined administration of funds and squandering funds. And if funds are not properly administered, it doesn't matter the quantum. Again, if you simulate the total figure of what goes to NDDC, what goes as 13%, what goes to Ministry of Niger Delta, and now what is going to host communities. If we administered all of these funds properly, the Niger Delta today will be, it's not much more money than that the Arab spent in transforming Dubai from a desert into what it is today. So it's okay to ask for more money, but more importantly, let's question how we've administered them. Because if we don't address that, whether we're giving 10% of OPEX or we're giving 2% of OPEX, it will go down the drain. So some of what I'm saying is I am satisfied with the sum set aside for the host community. I'm satisfied, even though it's too cumbersome with the way it is administered. But it boils down to how responsible the operator working with the host community representatives, how responsible are they in applying that funds to the development of that community. If they are responsible, you will see results, because we've done it, and we know that you will see results and the communities will be happy with you.
Thank you so much, Austin. And one other question I will ask you before we proceed to Professor Yinka to respond to Umar's concerns is what of product availability to the people and pricing, as it were, with all this? Is it possible that with all this development, we could still have issues of scarcity of products in the market?
It's because of a market system that government has insisted on controlling. When I go to my 12 market to buy yam, nobody controls the price there. I buy the yam that I can afford and bring it home for my family to feed. When you go to the petrol station to buy diesel for your generator, or for that matter, the part of the transportation network that caters for the poor people, the motorways and all the trucks and so on, they run on diesel. In the past 12 years, diesel has been deregulated, and nobody is quarreling about that. We're talking about petrol that only the elites who have cars use, and you insist on regulating it and making it scarce. It doesn't work. It has never worked. It has never benefited anybody. The sector must be deregulated, and when it is deregulated, people can afford to be efficient. You know how to drive your car and use the minimum volume of petrol that you can, because you're paying the market price for it. It is not for people who have, big 12-cylinder cars and so on, and you subsidize how much petrol they use. And whereas the buses that are carrying the masses are buying diesel at market price. It doesn't make sense. It has never made sense to me. For the past 20 years, I've been preaching deregulation and I've been writing about it. Now, if you deregulate, the products will be available. They might be expensive at some times when crude oil prices are high, and lower prices when crude oil prices are low. But the whole idea of regulating it has never made sense to me. Like I said, you go market to buy yam. Nobody is telling the person coming from bringing yams from the middle belt to say this is the price you must sell it. Well, you can't deregulate what you have no control over. You don't have refineries that are functioning. You just produce crude. You have no control over all the other forces about refining them and bringing them to the market. And you sit back in your office and fix a price. It's always been, look, it's never made sense, and I hope that this time around we'll drop the deregulation. It won't take more than 2 years of agitations here and there. We'll get used to buying products that are deregulated. We'll get used to it the same way we'll get used to buying kerosene for our stoves and buying diesel for our generators. We'll get used to it, and the market and the populace will be better off for it.
Professor Yinka, before we went on break, Umar called in from Benin Kebbi, and his concern was with all the high-floating English we are speaking, all the models, approaches we are talking about regarding PIB. What is in there for the common man? That was Umar's concern. Can you educate us?
Well, I have to say that what's in it for the common man, the passage of the PIB? Nothing at all. Once a bill is passed, nothing. There is no change once a bill has been passed. It is when you have an act that has been implemented that there can be anything like change. So there's no euphoria, no happiness. You say, well, great, we've laid down a framework, we have a legal framework, so that's something. But the common man will see some sorts of benefits. I would have to say that once we stop looking at the oil industry as merely a revenue earner, but as a means for sustainable development, then the common man, all of us will see a difference. You see this horrible electricity that we have. We shouldn't have it this way. Some of the things Mr. Avuru talked about, they should not be that way. We should not even be talking about importing. Being a country that has a lot of crude oil, sells its crude, imports products, there's something wrong with that, something very, very wrong. So you'll find that when we're implementing, there's certain things in the bill that should give us some pleasure. And I just want to mention one or two. For example, the domestic crude oil obligations, the domestic natural gas obligations that make it compulsory for certain amounts to be utilized here. The problem is we've been selling everything out and leaving Nigeria not covered at all. So once we have that, there will be crude oil for the different things that we need to do. There will be gas. There will be gas available for the different gas projects that we need to do, that we need to have in Nigeria. It should impact on the electricity sector, although that is another story, but it's essential for us. We shouldn't be buying, we shouldn't all have generators in the first place. Our poor should not be living on kerosene. And if the bill is implemented correctly, a lot of these concerns will be addressed, because for the first time, the downstream, the area of the industry that actually impacts on us in Nigeria will be covered by legislation and will be covered by an open system, an open, transparent system. So what I will say is that if it's implemented well, there should be an easing of life. We know life is really, really difficult for those that, the ordinary man, the common man. It's difficult in different ways for practically everybody living in Nigeria. But the implementation should help make things better. And that is why we all should never rejoice when a bill has been passed and made an act. It's a meaningless document until it's implemented and the provisions are actually applied.
Thank you so much, Prof. Let's now go to Professor Wumi. Professor Wumi, impact of the new regime on Nigeria's global competitiveness and capital investment in the sector with focus on enhanced tax incentives. How do you react to that?
I think like I mentioned earlier, I think the bill is very general to investors. If we begin with the instruments that are usually used, the combination of them, there are three things you look at when you have fiscal regime or fiscal instruments. You look at royalty, you look at taxes, and then you look at incentives. One thing that you are going to see in the bill is that the reward is no longer based on export. In the, I think it's 37. And production, in the past, we wanted to create some additional incentives if we're able to add more reserves, but that one is truncated. Now there are people vision there to reward effort in terms of capitalization of your expenditure. And you can even deduct your exploration activity that will can be deducted where you spend it. And then you can have what I think is suspension of hydrocarbon tax for PSC and deep offshore, which I think is extremely general. And then you even have a royalty that is low and progressive. And I think this the fiscal regime, in my opinion, is extremely competitive. We used to be stuck right in the middle compared to the other people competing with us. But I think now we are, in my opinion, progressive. We've moved away from the terrain. We've also moved away from a single tax that makes cost savings not attractive. Now the tax is now broken into two and even is suspended for deep water. And now it's just maybe about 30% corporate income tax and less than 30% from and 85% tax in the onshore baby oil to those and aggregate, even though they are not additive of an effective tax rate that is going to be below 60% when you calculate it. So there's no doubt. I think it's just like when you go in those days, you are a young person, you are fighting, and before they start, somebody just cut your leg. I think this COVID-19 and this zero was an instrument that was used to negotiate this type of generous fiscal regime, which is okay. Can we then get the investors to respond to us? Because that has been the argument from what I call the Revenue Federation account talk before that they gave up. And I think it's good. I don't particularly like not doing a framework that is flexible and dynamic. I will have put some of these taxes there and then just create a tax holiday. I mean, they did it to Abuja's company with Pioneer Tax, which they then paid significantly back revenue to the government as a result of that Pioneer Tax that has a fixed time. That's what I would have loved to see, instead of saying that no royalty for hydrocarbon, I mean for gas, no hydrocarbon tax for deep offshore. I think that was overtly too generous. I'm not saying we should go back and debate it, and that's why I'm calling for a provision that will allow us to review these things as the dynamics of the oil and gas industry change over time. Let me quickly make comments with respect to this local content. I think that's another aspect of this bill that we're not paying attention to. I think one of the best things that have ever happened in the oil and gas industry in Nigeria is the local content policy. And of course, we've gotten good two executive directors that have done extremely well over these last 10 years to make sure that this thing is not punitive at all. It's even good for the industry. I remember the company that I worked for when I was a young man some 40 years ago. The intention was to make sure that 95% of the employees to the senior staff management are from Nigeria. Until we did so many things with our policies that screwed it up. There are so many things that are good in this bill. There are certain things we can work on in the harmonization phase that will make even the bill move towards the type of things you want to see, keeping posterity in view. And I think the local content aspect is excellent because it creates a great multiplier effect if you can retain some earnings back in the domestic economy. And you can see it with post EMP, with Seplat, with Platform, with Energia, the type of impact they've created in the community in which they have operated because they are domestic. I mean, Abu just mentioned that over the last 12 years, there have not been any disruption. The same thing with Niger Delta Petroleum EMP, because they have found a way to make the host community inclusive in the ability to help them. So when you let somebody get involved in what you are doing to provide solutions to their problems, things work well. And that's going to be just my encouragement. I want to emphasize again, like Professor Yinka said, it is one thing to have a bill. It is one thing to translate the bill into an act, but another thing to make the implementation effective. Nigeria has not been very good at that. And the reason is what we need to kill is called prebendalism. If we are able to kill prebendalism in Nigeria, my friends, the sky is our limit. What is dragging us back is not being inclusive in the implementation of strategies that will take us out. There's no better place to be or to invest than Nigeria. I can testify to that. Even the companies, they know that. You have the human capacity, you have friendly environment, and you have a jolly good fellow. If you just stop some of these syndromes, just today, without keeping the future in perspective. And let me quickly answer, and I'll keep quiet now. Let me answer directly to my friend from I think probably from the north. What is the benefit of an act that is well implemented? One, your roads that are bad because of petroleum subsidy, 1 trillion naira every year over the last 10 years will be improved upon. The type of education I had when I went to Federal Government College, Sokoto, from 49 years ago, you'll be able to go to King's College. The type of medical facility you are supposed to have that you don't have now. If this act is properly implemented, I put my money down, you will see the minimization of social welfare loss that we've experienced over the last 10 years because of the mismanagement of petroleum resources. This petroleum industry bill, in my opinion, despite the limitations, if properly implemented, and all of those things that are interjected in it, from the public hearing to now, they are removed. Then you can be sure that what you are going to see is an improvement in the petroleum sector that has a great multiplier effect that can have an intergenerational implication. It just began with good implementation. And a good implementation depends on inclusiveness and the killing of Easter syndrome and the abandonment of prebendalism. Try it, and it will work. The society will be better off if this act is passed and all of those encumbrances in the upstream regulator in NMCC Limited are minimized to the extent that political expediency will allow it to happen. Thank you very much for the opportunity.
Prof, let's proceed to Austin. Austin, listening to Prof, I want to ask you this. In the overall, will the foreign earnings accruing from oil will fare better with the PIB. And Professor Yinka and Wumi have talked about the fact that it is time now we look beyond just profit revenue, and look at other benefits we can make from the windfall from whatever we get from oil. So besides the revenue, how the revenue from the foreign revenue from these, what else can we do besides profit?
Thank you. There was a very fundamental point that Professor Moro made. Professor Wumi later repeated it. The real fundamental shift with this bill, which is probably the reason they were so generous in the fiscal regime. I mean, to put it